Hey there, welcome to Farmcraft. I'm John, and behind me is the Beast. This is a Case 170B excavator that I've been working on. It's also known in some circles as Large Marge, kind of like that name too. In the last video, I was working on reinstalling a rebuilt injection pump and injectors. I had some problems right at the end of the video with a very difficult to reach oil line that was leaking a lot of oil and had to be fixed. So that's what we're going to pick up on today. The problem is this line which I've replaced is not the same as the original, and the nut right here is pressing against the block and preventing it from sealing up. So the big question is, can I fix this oil line without having to disassemble everything that I did in the last video? If I have to disassemble it and then reassemble it, we're talking about probably more than a day's work, very likely 2 days. So we're gonna head right into that little quandary. I'm calling this the story of the Banjo bolt. All right, got something in the mail, and this is the end that goes up underneath, and you can see there's nothing protruding. It's different than the line that was on there. This is a redesigned part, but this is an original Deutz part. The hose is very flexible, so much easier to bend. So to try to get this Banjo bolt to stay in position, I'm gonna put some grease on it. First washer, a little more grease. In, and again, a little more grease. So that kind of keeps that bolt in position there. So here's the idea. I'm going to go up from underneath the pump, and I'm going to get this in position. We're going to have the bore scope there so that I can look and tell that I'm close. And then we need to figure out how to screw that guy in. I tried as hard as I could. I could get my finger to like there, but there's no way. I can't get enough to actually do the Banjo bolt. So I lack the repair skills necessary for this. We're going to have to bring in the big guns. So speaking of big guns, here they come now. This is a tool I've never had to use on heavy equipment before. So here's the deal. My arm won't fit. And hers might. We're going to find out. And I'm going to try to hold the bolt up from under here.
And then I'm going to turn it that way.
I hope so. Yeah. Wow, look at that. Yeah, you go ahead and reach in. Might need your help.
What if I knock it off?
Well, then we'll do it again. So here you can see what we're trying to do. The bolt is behind the injection pump here, and with this oil cooler and all this other stuff in the way, my fat arm just won't reach back there. But let's see if Jennifer's can. I can't tell which way to move it.
I can't either.
All right.
Like, I'm pushing that back in.
Oh, good. Good, good. Keep pushing on that. So I had been hoping that it would just be this easy. I would get the bolt close, she'd reach in, and she'd screw it in. But it wouldn't go. The line, especially being a hard line, made it kind of difficult to get the bolt in the right position.
You really have to dig into your arm.
What's digging in?
I don't know, some metal back there.
Something in here?
Yeah, back there. If I don't have it over there, it like pulls the top away because it's pushing on. Does that make sense? Like if I have it like this, it appears more straight to me, but it is hitting something and pushes it away.
Yeah, I just bent it a little bit. Looks like
there, I'm turning it.
It needs to angle.
I'm turning it. It didn't go in, then I don't know what.
So, I mean,
Oh, I got my arm past something. It's in further.
Keep turning it and see if, as you angle it, slightly up or slightly down. If it doesn't feel like it, you'll feel it kind of grab if the threads are in.
I need a break. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Still pushing on my arm pretty hard. I think I just got to keep trying. I mean, I'm there. Okay, I got it.
Hundreds of thousands of people are rooting for you, Jennifer.
This is crazy. Why won't it go in? I'm angling it right and left, which doesn't seem to be helping. But like up and down's hard because of it's hitting things.
Hard line, yeah.
Yeah. This, do you see this, my right finger tapping something? That's hitting. This bend right here is hitting the back wall, and this right here is hitting the top. So I can do this, but I can't do this.
I can try and bend it. Hopefully it won't break.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the problem or not.
That thing is something else.
It's not the right angle. You can keep wiggling it if you want.
Yeah, let's reevaluate here.
Okay.
You take a break and I'm gonna maybe set up another, I have another borescope. Yeah, I can't do anything about what it's hitting. I think all we can do is bend it.
This right here.
The washer is frustrating. Make it a hard line. The stupid thing won't go. Bend it there. That should do it.
Low battery about to something.
You're about to lose your screen.
Hey, it might be going in.
It looks like it is.
Yeah. It's just now it's too tight.
Okay, I can do that with a wrench. Try to pull the bolt out.
I can't. Unless I've not threaded it right.
I don't think so. You got several turns on it. We'll see. I think that might have done it. Good job, Jennifer.
Let me know.
All right, I will. Thank you. I actually had 2 scopes hooked up so that I could see the angle because we couldn't tell which way it needed to go. And I really think it started there. What a pain in the butt. Why did they make it a hard line? That made it even worse. Just leave it that flexible line and you could easily line it up. So I'm gonna put a wrench in there now and we're gonna see if we can't tighten that thing down. To get the wrench on it, boy, that angle is horrible though, to understand which way to go. That does not feel cross-threaded at all. Notice there's nothing sticking out on this line to hit the block, and you can even see the grease squeezing out as the washer compresses. I think it's on there. Good grief. So that probably took an hour, but the alternative was taking the pump off. In order to take the pump off, I got to take the cooler off. In order to take the cooler off, I got to take the oil filter housing off and all of this stuff. In order to then take the pump off, I have to go to the other side. I'd have to take the fan shroud off and get the belts out of the way, take the tensioner off, unbolt the pump gear. I mean, there's so much work to get that pump off of there. An hour there was well spent. So hard for me to show you, but just because of the shape of the hard line, it is jamming the soft line against the bottom of the injection pump. So I have to bend it away. And when you start bending stuff, things break sometimes. What are you gonna do? Okay, that line is installed. Okay, now the real test. I'm gonna crank it and we're gonna watch for leaks. You know, if it leaks at this point, I can just tighten it a little further. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything. No leak, just spitting fuel, which I wish it would quit doing, but it continues to do it. It definitely would have been leaking by now. I don't see any leaks on the front either. We got it. Thank goodness that hurdle's out of the way. Here she is, my savior. So Jennifer's definitely the hero of the day. Here you can see how her arm was getting smashed, and this is what it looked like the next day. Yep, I have an awesome wife and I owe her after this one. So we're ready to get to work on this upper end. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check each cylinder and make sure that there's no dirt or debris that's gotten into the cylinder. Make sure that the washer is not, from the injector, is not sitting there. Man. I don't know if you can see that. I have water sitting on the pistons. I guess it's condensation. I mean, this thing doesn't get wet. This is dry as a bone, and I've got them plugged. I'm really disappointed by this. I've got water in cylinders 1 and 6. Not a lot, it's just sitting on the crown of the piston, and both of the pistons are all the way up. So, could be worse, but I'm kind of kicking myself. I just didn't think water had a way in, but apparently it did. All these cooling fins and stuff, I don't think it was as, obviously it wasn't as sealed as I thought it was. So here's cylinder 1. See, it even got rust down into the bore there. I'm gonna have to take a wire brush and brush that out. And there you can see it. It's just sitting on the crown of the piston. And hopefully it only happened yesterday, because it rained really hard yesterday. And again, this one, yeah, water in it. I can't see anything. So I brought my shop vac all the way down to this so I can stick that in the actual cylinder and vacuum the water and anything else that might have gotten in there. Alright, so here's the update. I got them all vacuumed out and cleaned out. The copper washers are stuck in 1, 5, and 6. Can't get them out. The only way to get them out is to actually take the heads off, and I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to reuse those washers. I'll verify that they're not leaking later. It's just a copper washer. Should be reusable. No, I can't anneal it in position because it's aluminum. The heads are aluminum. I would melt those. So what I want to do now is scope the cylinders. I want to look at the cylinder bores and also just make sure I didn't miss any debris in there. There's a little bit of carbon down in the cylinders, but that's not going to hurt anything. That'll just get blown out. I just don't want any chunks of rust or anything in there. Cylinder 1 and cylinder 6 are both at the top right now. The other 4, you can actually see most of the cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and scope 2 through 4, and then we're going to turn the engine 180 degrees, and then I'll scope 1 and 6. Okay. So cylinder 2 looks really good. Still see crosshatch on it. Does have a little bit of some vertical lines that look very superficial. And I think that's a pretty good looking cylinder. If I had to guess, that one's been rebuilt not too far back. Okay, we are going to 3. 3 has some superficial scoring on the cylinder walls. I don't see crosshatch. This one definitely has more wear. But I don't see pitting or anything that looks terrible. It'll be interesting to see what the compression shows. Okay, so those lines there are from me vacuuming. That was a piece of plastic hose that I was moving up and down to get debris out. And I'd say 4 looks better than 3. There might be a hint of crosshatch left, but a little bit of superficial lines. It's not as good as 2. So 5, I don't know, am I seeing crosshatch there? Must be. It almost looks like somebody honed it, but they didn't get a good angle on their crosshatch. It's a little too horizontal, but doesn't look bad. All right, so we're going to rotate the engine 180 degrees, and then we'll look at 1 and 6. You can see it still has the copper washer in there. It won't come out. So it's at the bottom now. This one had water in it. It still has a tiny bit. I don't see crosshatch. I do see some superficial lines, but really doesn't look too bad. I'm okay with that. So let's go over here to 6. Same thing. And there's still a little bit of water in it, but not much. That's very little. I think once I start cranking this thing over with these injectors out, it's going to blow that water out of there. While this thing is easy to turn over because the injectors are out, I'm going to adjust the valves. They're supposed to be 6/1000ths, both intake and exhaust. So let's get all these valve covers off. Yeah, so this is cylinder 1, and I've rotated 180 degrees. I had it at top dead center. That means I've now come down and I'm starting my exhaust stroke, which that's the exhaust valve, and it's tight. Intake valve is loose. Number 2 is on the intake. Exhaust is loose. To adjust these valves, there's a couple ways you can do it. You just need to be sure that the valve is not being pressed by the camshaft. So I know this piston is down, so there would be no valve overlap. And I know this valve, which is the exhaust valve, because it's the exhaust manifold right there, is being depressed, and it's loose. So that valve is ready to be adjusted. And it's supposed to be 6/1000ths, and 6 goes in there way too easy. And in fact, I've already kind of tinkered around. I think it's at 11. Yeah, 11 goes in there. Actually, maybe even a little too easy too. So what I need to do is loosen the jam nut right there and then screw that in, which will tighten up the valve lash. So let's do this one together, and then I'll probably bring you back for after I'm done. So I'm putting the feeler gauge between the rocker arm and the push rod, and then I'm turning that adjustment screw with my right hand to adjust the space and getting it so that there's just a tiny bit of drag on that feeler gauge. Hey, that one actually stayed put. A lot of times when you tighten them, they change the adjustment. It gets really annoying. You keep having to redo it. Oh, that feels really good. One down. 11 to go. After adjusting all the valves that were in a position that could be adjusted, I rotated the engine so that I could do the others. And for future me, I'll go ahead and mark the last 2, just so I know the next time I open these up that I did them all. So I got these all cleaned up, and the gaskets actually all look good. They used RTV, but I think they just used it to glue the gasket to one side. So I'm just going to reuse those, except one of them broke, so I've got some high tack on that, and I've got some new gaskets here, so I'll save those for when I need them in the future, and I'll use one now. The rest of them look fine. And as the instructions for high tack states, I use it on both the gasket and the metal. Okay, valves are adjusted. That's a nice hurdle to have out of the way. So I put a big trash bag over the engine, so that's protected directly, and then I put that over the whole machine. Hopefully we're not getting any water in the cylinders. Alright, something else I want to do while I'm here is check the compression on the cylinders. If I found one that had bad compression, I'm going to have to see how it runs. I don't know if I would necessarily jump straight into rebuilding it at this point. But let's see what we're dealing with. I have an injector blank. This is actually, there's no injector there. It's just a straight pass-through. So if I put that in the position of an injector and clamp it down, then all I need is to attach this to my compression test hose. And you've got these various fittings that will snap on there. Well, I found this one is one that I have the tap for. That is an M10 by 1 1/4 thread, and I've got that tap. And then this is an M14 by 1 1/2 thread, and I've also got that tap. So basically I just need to make a female to female coupler with this thread and this thread on either side, and then I can screw these together, put my compression test hose there, and then I'm going to be able to check the compression in each hole. So that's the idea.
Alright, now I'm going to do the 3 with washers first, because if I put a washer on there and then smash it down, it's going to be hard to get off. So this one has a washer. First attempt, let's see what we get. And we got to 260. But it took a lot of cranking to get to 260. Quite honestly, I'm not sure that this is sealing.
Alright, that compression reading had me a little worried, so I took this back out, and looking at this, it actually doesn't let a lot of air through. So I think that would be why the compression's going up so slowly, because it has to get through this and then it has to fill up the hose and the gauge. So I need to open this up and see if I can't make this more just a straight shot through. I'm not sure what's stopping the airflow.
I didn't get good footage of it, but the only obstruction I see is down in here. It looks like maybe a check valve or something. So I try to punch it out.
Ain't doing much. Now the question is, am I going to be able to mill this? Milling pretty easy. The hole didn't go down at a perfectly straight, so that's why I need an end mill and not a drill bit. There we go. Now we got a hole through it. Wide open now.
Let's see something good. I'd like to see 350. That's just over 300. So not terrible. So I'm going to go over to cylinder 5. This is another one that has the washer. Well, it's like exactly the same. Had to pump that one for a while to get to 295. It's definitely not as good. I'm actually kind of hoping that this one's around 300 because that'll tell me the others are pretty darn good. I don't know if that makes logical sense or not. Let's see. $295. I mean, I think we might be okay. They're all, I mean, I've done 4 cylinders so far and they're all pretty much the same within 10 PSI. Yeah, that's the best one so far. That's 310. If I remember right, this is the one that when I pulled it out was very black. That tells me that it was probably not sealing on the copper washer. Combustion gases were coming out. Last one. That one's 300 on the money. So, what does that tell me? I was hoping for higher numbers, but I think the fact that they're all almost identical, you know, it's possible that my gauge is off a little bit, that my testing setup isn't great. The fact of the matter is this thing started well, even when cold. That's unlikely to have low compression. All the cylinders are basically the same within 15 PSI. I think the compression's good. That's my conclusion. What do you think?
Deutz, that's enough.
Can finally start putting these injectors back in and have the engine sealed up again. Does not need the washer because it already has one. Okay. Number 2 does get a washer. Putting a little dab of grease just to hold that washer on while I'm lowering it into position. All right. Now let's get in this line in place.
This is the fuel return line for all the injectors. They are all hooked together with Banjo bolts. My favorite. But hey, at least I can see these. I can even get my fingers on them. Now I'm blowing out all the fuel lines. The other ends are still disconnected and there's caps on the connections at the pump.
We're finally at the point that we can hook up these fuel lines. Before I hook the lines up at the injectors, I'm going to crank it and we're going to blow some diesel fuel through all these lines and make sure they're clear. So that's the fuel shut off, so that's no longer off, and we'll give it some throttle. Well,
I think I got a little ahead of myself.
that would be throwing my injectors back out of the cylinder because I haven't put those bolts on yet. So let's not give it a crank just yet. So no torque spec on this. I'm torquing to the standard torque for a 10 millimeter medium strength bolt. Which, if you're wondering, is 57 Newton meters. If this should be tighter, somebody let me know. Of course, the Deutz manual, there's a section where it tells you torque specs on some of the components, you know, the critical ones and like engine rebuilding, but it doesn't tell you nearly as many torque specs as most engines I'm used to working on. And we should be okay to crank it. That was gratifying. They all started spraying at the same time. By golly, I think we're ready to hook the injectors back up. Am I forgetting anything? Engine has oil. And yes, I could have cut the dipstick off, but the dipstick has a twist at the bottom. And you're just asking, I don't know, I'd rather keep it the same. I'm glad I didn't have to change it. But yeah, you could totally just cut it off. Because see, now it might start if I crank this thing. Really what I want it to do is bleed again at all the lines. So let's see what it does. If it does start, I'm gonna have to reach down here and turn down the throttle. Well, it runs. A little bit of a mess, not too bad. The important thing is I didn't mess the timing up. It's always a little worrisome when you take a injection pump off and then put it back on. Did something change and you screwed up your timing? Because if it did, getting it back can be a trick. We'll do half throttle and fire her up. Okay, don't want to run it too long without this shroud there. And I also want to go down below and just make sure I don't have any leaks. But that is what I wanted to hear. It sounded good, started right up. No way that thing has low compression. I didn't clean it very well, but I did spray off the block here. And there is no oil where I cleaned off and where it was dumping out before. I think there is still a little bit on that, but it's because I didn't clean it. No oil coming out of the oil cooler, of course. I don't see any evidence of leaks. That all looks really good. Excellent.
Okay, so we're going to start it up. Here's the exhaust, but there's a big exhaust leak down in here, so you're just going to see who knows what coming out of that. That is pretty much next on the list. But I want to see if this thing still smokes when I put it under load, because it was very low on power and it smoked a heck of a lot previously. So I'm hoping that the new injectors and correctly tuned injection pump by Area Diesel Service is going to make a difference. Now, if it doesn't, the turbo is the obvious culprit. I know the turbo has issues, but let's see how this thing goes.
Awesome. I'm really happy with that. Probably wasn't apparent to you. It was still smoking, no surprise. It's not getting enough charge air from the turbo, so it's over-fueled, and that excess fuel is coming out of the exhaust as black smoke. But it has far more power than it did, a lot. Previously, when I would try to pick up the boom, it would strain, the engine would bog. Now it was nothing. You just pick up the boom, it was fine. Yeah, that made a big difference. I think we're on track to having a really good running engine once we get this turbo done. All right, I'm dying to check out this turbo.
For those who aren't familiar, a turbo is a high-tech fan that blows air into the intake of an engine and increases the horsepower that the engine can produce. It's driven by the exhaust gases, which is a clever design. When the engine's working hard and it's producing a lot of exhaust, the turbo will automatically respond and push in more air. They also spin at very high RPM, some up to 200,000 RPM, so it's a very precisely machined and balanced device. It should not have a lot of play or slop anywhere in it.
We get black smoke when I'm under load, which means it's injecting the fuel, but it's not getting the air. That makes you think turbo. And it could be the turbo itself. It could also be our exhaust manifold leaking so much that it doesn't have enough pressure to feed the turbo. What we're going to do now is the old farmer test on the turbo. I'm going to take this intake pipe off so we can get to the turbo axle shaft and see how much play we can appreciate. Oops. Well, I can move that quite a lot, and that's definitely not how it's supposed to be. Now, it isn't rubbing on anything when it spins. I mean, that's probably moving 40 thousandths. The other thing you want to check is the in and out play, pushing the shaft in, pulling it out. And you're not supposed to be able to feel any, and I must say I don't feel any that way. So, I mean, it's not that bad, I guess. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that turbo is going to need to be rebuilt at the very least, replaced at the worst. Well, there you go, guys. The beast runs again, runs well, and we've made progress. Definitely more power. I'm real happy with that. That's kind of what I was expecting. I knew the turbo was an issue, and when you're not getting enough charge air, you're going to smoke. And I think that's what we have as our primary engine issue now. So I'm going to get that turbo off of there, and we're going to send that to area diesel service. Now, rebuilding a turbo, if it just kind of needs, you know, maybe some new bushings and a few things, is not that hard if you can get a rebuild kit. But this turbo is going to need some machining and some significant work. Stuff that I've never seen done before, and maybe I could muddle my way through it, but I'd really like to see an expert do it. So Area Diesel is going to take care of that for me, and as soon as they've done it, I will be posting a link to the video of them rebuilding that. What I'm going to work on now, I've got two areas that are leaking. The hydraulic oil cooler is intolerably leaking, so I need to address that. And then there are hoses in the pilot controls up underneath the cab. So I need to get those fixed. So those are the next two things on the very long list. It's been a lot of work. It's been more work than I was expecting. You know, when you buy a machine that everything functions and it does all the things that it's supposed to do, you kind of think, well, it couldn't be too bad, but man, this is a big machine and it's just got a lot of things, a lot of issues. So don't underestimate how much work it can need, even if it functions. Enough yakking, good progress. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Somebody commented that they didn't believe that it was 11 feet wide. I'm not sure why they think I would make that up, but you know, I have to admit they were right. It's not 11 feet wide. It's 11 feet 3 inches wide. A little wider than I said. I know stuff doesn't come across on camera as big as it is. Hills don't look as steep as they are, all that kind of stuff. I've had a lot of people over here that have seen this on video, and then when they see it in person, they're kind of blown away. Every one of them has said, yeah, that's bigger than I thought it was. It's big.